Well, welcome to our unveiling of our Mathias Alten painting. We're really excited about this. It's our first real piece of art for Grand Rapids, and we thank Dean Weiner very much for working on that with our Professor Paul Carrier and helping us decorate our walls. I want to introduce our speakers to you. We're really very pleased to have such authorities here on this, and I understand that our board member, Jane Markey, who's not one of the speakers, is also quite a collector of Mathias Alten and actually has some murals in her house done by him in addition to some paintings. So I'm sure that she would be happy to talk to anyone about that too. No, I won't make you stand up and give a speech with no notice, but you might like to talk to some of the people about yours. Okay. First of all, Celeste Adams, who's the director of the Grand Rapids Art Museum, will be talking to you. And then James Straub, who is researching and putting together a catalog of Alten work to be published, we hope soon. And then Kim Smith, who is from Perception Gallery and another expert on Alten. Who'll talk to you after we unveil the painting about how this fits into Alten's work. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce William Weiner, who's our Associate Dean of, I want to get this right, International Graduate and Extended Programs, because I always forget the extended part, who's our resident Cooley art expert and a huge supporter of the arts, all kinds of them, theater, symphony, and artwork. So, Bill?
Thanks, Marion. Let me tell you a little bit about the Art at Cooley project that we have going. Just about a year ago, President LeDuc came to me with an idea to buy some art for the school. Cooley stresses professionalism and having real art that is more than just decoration. Having some of that around helps to set an appropriate professional tone. And so that's what he was looking for. He gave us a generous grant to get started, and I immediately set up something called the Art at Cooley Fund and began to do some fundraising. Since then, we've received an additional $3,000 in contributions from people, and we have received 2 very nice pieces of art as well. So, this is the commercial. If you'd like to consider a tax-deductible gift, I'll be here to talk to you after the show. I also did what all academics do, and that was form a committee to help with the project. You can't do anything in academia without a committee. And we have a good mix of faculty and alumni, all of them highly interested in art. And I want to introduce 2 of them to you today, and I am going to insist that they give us a wave. One is Professor Paul Carrier. He's in the back here. He's a member of our Grand Rapids faculty, and he's here today. Next to him is Jim Newton. Hi, Jim, best man at my wedding. An alumnus, an East Lansing lawyer, and also an avid art collector, and he took the time to jump in the car and drive down with us today, I think also because I wouldn't let him see the painting if he didn't come. We have an informal mission that guides our acquisitions. 3 things, but we don't have to have all 3. We probably never would fit all 3 together, or we haven't yet. Michigan artists we're looking for. We're looking for legal themes, and we're looking for some connection to our various campuses. Few pieces, of course, are going to satisfy all 3 of these aims or guidelines, but this one satisfies 2 because it's a Michigan artist, it belongs in Grand Rapids, and so it has a connection to our new Grand Rapids campus. We've been looking for something for the Grand Rapids campus. We had swung and missed a couple times at an auction. Out of the blue, a collector with no Cooley connection at all told me there were 4 Altens coming up at a sale out in Maine this weekend. And so I scurried around, gathered the committee together as best I could, and we decided on one of the 4. Paul thought that this one was by far the more powerful of the 4. Jim agreed. I thought it was in the best condition of the 4, so we went after it, and darned if we didn't get this one. I tell my friends that buying at an auction is a lot more like the NFL draft than it is shopping. Just because it's on your list doesn't mean you're going to come home with it. Other people are out there chasing this stuff too. But we did. We did get this one. Our pre-sale investigation determined that it would need a good cleaning and that it would need some frame repair. To me, there's a strong and important relationship between collecting and stewardship. This 90-year-old painting is now in better shape than when we found it, and it's going to be in better shape for the next 90 years while we're taking care of it, that's for sure. Ken Katz, a very excellent conservator in Detroit, did the restoration work for us on both the painting and the frame. It's called The Approaching Storm, and all of you from Michigan and the Midwest will relate to it instantly, I'm sure. We'll take the cover off for all of you to see in a few minutes, but as Marion said, first we have a couple of speakers here to help us learn a bit more about Mathias Alten. I really am very pleased to introduce Celeste Adams to you. She's the director of the Grand Rapids Art Museum. We're delighted and a bit flattered that she could join us today and tell us about Alten in Grand Rapids and in her museum.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to join you this afternoon. In 1998, the Grand Rapids Art Museum organized the first major retrospective of the work of Mathias Alten. Mathias Alten is really the preeminent Michigan artist at the turn of the century, and he made his home here in Grand Rapids. For this major exhibition project, we drew scholars from around the art world, major scholars in American art, formed a team along with experts in our own community. So there's a very large group, local and national, working on the exhibition, and it was a tremendous success for the Art Museum, and really, I think, a landmark exhibition in terms of refocusing the attention of the community on a major artist from our hometown. You think of the Art Museum as a place that exhibits works of art, but in fact, our primary mission is education, to educate the community about artists, local and national, help us understand more about their careers and their contribution, their legacy in the arts. Mathias Alten was an artist who had a career much like other artists of his era. At the turn of the century, many American artists were still strongly influenced by Europe, and Alten traveled there, in his case to Spain, and was strongly influenced by the artist Joaquim Sorolla, who was working there. So you can trace some of his subject matter as inspired by his own international travels. He traveled to North Africa and to the Netherlands as well, and the museum includes paintings that reference those destinations of his travel. He also participated in art colonies in New England. During this era, artists in the summer gathered together to enrich each other with ideas, and Alten participated in this kind of networking with other artists nationally. He also traveled to the West and the Southwest. So this is an artist who made his home here, but drew from national and international sources, and his work reflects this kind of development, a long and productive career. The Art Museum today has approximately 60 works of art by Mathias Alten, some of which we have placed on extended loan in institutions such as the Grand Rapids Library and St. Mary's Hospital. In addition to being a painter, Alten worked in glass, and we have a very beautiful glass screen installed at St. Mary's. So we're very interested in having the community at large learn more about this exceptional artist. We are, as many of you know, in the midst of building a new museum, and when our new galleries open, Mathias Alten Works will be there, and we will be organizing a traveling exhibition that will travel throughout the region and around the state of Michigan, helping people learn more about Alten. So we're delighted to see Cooley Law School also engaged in this activity and interested in pursuing the works of Mathias Alten. I'd like to turn the podium over to Jim Straub, a great friend and colleague who I first met working on the Alten project, and who is, I think, one of the great and definitive experts on the work of Alten. Jim?
Thank you. I am writing what is called a catalog raisonné on Mathias Alten, and it is an undertaking in which I'm trying to document all the known paintings of Alten, paintings that were done in both oil and watercolor. In order to do that, what I do is photograph every one of the works, those that I can. Some will never be photographed because I don't know whether or not their extent, but there is a history of the painting somewhere, a newspaper article, an exhibition record, or something of that sort. So the catalog will take each individual work and indicate in it what is the support? That is it oil on canvas, an oil on canvas laid down or attached to a board, oil on panel, whether it is a watercolor on paper, a watercolor in gouache, and that sort of thing, where it is signed, if it is signed, any inscriptions on it, any known what is called provenance or history of the painting, where it was exhibited, perhaps who owned the painting down through history. Some of those paintings, if in my catalog, present owners will only be indicated by as private collectors, unless the painting is in a public or quasi-public collection. Today, there are 10 museums that own Alten paintings. Lots of colleges and universities, Grand Valley, Aquinas, Calvin College, now Cooley, many churches, and other quasi-public institutions. So each one of the painting gets that history, gets that photograph or documentation. Will also include the exhibition records that I know of, signature examples, and how those signatures varied through time. Alten was born in Germany in 1871. He first went to Paris in 1899 to study art at the Académie Julian and the Académie Colarossi. And I began about that point and a little bit before documenting some of his work. So it's a continuing thing with me. I work on it several hours every day. And so far I've got about 1,360 images photographed with documentation. The Approaching Storm is your painting. From somewhere I've had for years a photograph of this painting, and I'm not even sure how I came across that photograph, but I've had that with the inscription on the back of it and that sort of thing.
Okay, thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Jim is in fact coming to Lansing tomorrow, where we're going to go on a field trip. Through Jim Newton a number of years ago, I found a gorgeous large Alten in a public room at the People's Church in East Lansing, and Jim Straub had never heard of it. So we're going over there tomorrow with our tape measures and our photographs, or our cameras, and we're going to try not to get chased out of the church by the folks who think we're going to try to steal their painting, which we're not. But it is a very large painting of, you folks say it's an unusual subject for Alten. It's a Lake Michigan sand dune scene, and it is quite handsome, and I hope you'll like it. So I agree with him. He's working on this every day because I got him working tomorrow in Lansing. Now, Dean Halligan, Ms. Kruska, if you folks would do the honors and show us Alten's painting, The Approaching Storm.
Drums, where are the drums? We didn't want to whisk it off and endanger anyone. Cleaned up really well.
When you get a chance to look at it when we're done, you'll see one lone figure seeking some shelter under this large tree. He's clearly not a golfer, because a golfer would never head for the one large tree in the opening. Our final speaker is Kim Smith from Perception Gallery just down the street. My guess is you bought and sold more Altens than almost anybody, including one that you sold to me. And now that we have the painting in view, I'm hoping that Kim, who has seen it already, can tell us a little bit about how it fits within the work overall of Mathias Alten. Kim?
Actually, I have seen this painting before, but it was only online. I have kind of mixed emotions about this, because out of the 4 paintings that were offered at auction, I ended up buying 2, and unfortunately was outbid by Cooley for this one. Now that I look at the painting, perhaps I should have been a little more aggressive, but I'm going to say I'm happy that it ended up going into this fine collection. I want to start out by presenting the school with a book regarding Mathias Alten that was part of the catalog that was put together for the retrospective by the Grand Rapids Art Museum. Something to go into your library and help your students to learn a little bit more about Alten.
Thank you so much, Kim. We are trying to find some written material to buttress our painting collection, and I see my librarian over there smiling away. And they always like it when they can add a volume to the collection, and it doesn't cost them. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. As you know, I mean, the business of art is about real materials, paintings, but it also is a great deal about scholarship. And I think Celeste touched on it, a great deal about education. Jim touched on it, about the research that goes into all of these types of publications. And then finally to people like me that are truly interested in the scholarship part of it, but unfortunately make my bread and butter trying to buy and sell these things. I did not get that good a look at it because this thing looked pretty bad online. Their photos were pretty bad, so I'm going to take a quick peek at this. It gives us a pretty good idea of course, what Michigan weather can be like, as we have all noticed for about the last 30 days. We have had nothing but approaching storms. And I think if there is anything that Alten was able to convey, and I think that was his purpose, is to go out and to some way look at whatever landscape or scene that he saw and try to not only record visually what he saw, but also a certain amount of the atmosphere that was taking place at that time. This is a piece that was painted, I believe, in 1917. So Alten had already gone to, as Jim stated, to Paris in 1899 for a little formal schooling. He'd gone back to the Netherlands in 1910, 1911. In 1912, he went to Valencia, Spain. So this is just about midway between really the next two trips that he took to Europe, which was 1912 going to Valencia, and then 1922 going back to Valencia. So we're looking at something that he has now painted nothing but Michigan landscapes for 5 straight years. And I think he's given us a pretty good idea of what Michigan landscape is about. And the one thing I think speaks to us about Alten's paintings is that we can walk out today. And no matter if this painting was done yesterday or 80 or 90 years ago, this is still Michigan today. Maybe a little more development in some areas, but it is still the landscape that we know. Also, I'd like to make a comment about the framing that they were able to restore. On occasion, not all the time, but you also get a great frame when you get a painting. And this particular frame was made by the Newcomb-Macklin Company out of Chicago, which many people consider to be the top American frame maker, and particularly during this time period. They started in Chicago in the 1880s. I was lucky enough when I first started in this business in 1976 to take a few tours of the Newcomb factory. I know that they had so many different patterns. I'm not sure they really knew how many different types of frames they could make. This particular part in here is not carved, but is ornamented with something they call composition. Newcomb themselves had 4,000 different molds in which they could make these different profiles from. So it starts to give you a little bit of idea of exactly how many different types and styles of frames they can make. It appears to be in, I would say for the most part, it's straight original finish. Probably something, the thing about Newcomb-Macklin that they did is they used gold metal leaf as opposed to gold leaf, and we're all kind of familiar with gold leaf frames, very bright. Gold metal leaf actually has no actual gold in it. It's more of a copper base, but it is still laid in a leaf form by hand. And the reason that people use that is because then they were going to tone it. So there's no sense in wasting gold leaf underneath something that you're going to put a great deal of tone on. And I'd say this is something that was certainly more toned, because it is certainly a little bit of a deeper toned painting, and it just is more harmonious, I think, with the colors. So Bill, I think you've got a great addition and a great beginning to this collection. And congratulations.
Thank you. Well, let's wrap up real quickly if we could. Again, I want to thank Celeste Adams for coming today, Jim Straub for coming today. I'll see you tomorrow, Jim, and I'm looking forward to it. And to Kim Smith. We are delighted. On behalf of Don LeDuc, our dean, who is out of town this weekend and was unable to come, we're absolutely delighted to have found this painting in Maine and to have brought it back to Grand Rapids, where it belongs, and where, of course, Cooley Law School now belongs to. Thank you all for coming today. Come on up and see the painting. Be careful with it. Steve Wynn just put an elbow through his Picasso the other day, so be careful. But thank you all for coming, and please enjoy the reception prepared for us by our Grand Rapids campus.
Yes, and please,
We are adjourned.
Stay where you are for a moment while we pass out the toast. We're going to have a toast.
Oh, a toast. I'll let you do the toast.